G'day, my name is Tom Kling with the Kling Group. For the past 35 years, I've dedicated a large percentage of my life to promoting safety in the OTR tyre service industry around the globe. After all, as technicians, our number one goal should always be to arrive home safe and healthy at the end of the day so we can be with our friends and loved ones.
Inflation pressure is a lot like a person's blood pressure. If it's too low or too high, humans are in danger. The same principles apply for OTR tires. The important thing to remember is that even new pressure gauges can be out of spec, so they should be regularly checked for accuracy using an air gauge check station or a calibrated master gauge. Earthmover tires have a maximum speed of 40 miles per hour or 65 kilometers per hour, with a maximum distance of 2.5 miles or 4 kilometers one way. Grader tires have a maximum speed of 25 miles per hour or 40 kilometers per hour and also have an unlimited distance one way. And finally, loader and dozer tires have a maximum speed of 5 miles per hour or 10 kilometers per hour, with a maximum distance of 250 feet or 76 meters.
Servicing large OTR and Earthmover tyres with an articulated crane or tyre handler can be hazardous for a variety of reasons. From weather conditions, overhead power line, to the position of the load. A lot of things can go wrong when you are not paying attention to your work.
There are two basic types of OTR service truck: the articulating crane and the hydraulic tire handler, which is also referred to as a tire hand or manipulator. Hydraulic tire handlers can also be mounted on forklifts for on-site Earthmover tire service. The load rating of the hook applies to loads held uniformly in direct tension. However, the load rating does not take into account shock loads, hook tip loading, side loading, bending, torsional, or related loads. When the crane is not properly positioned, it puts excessive stress on the hydraulics and can result in the service truck becoming unstable. Being off by just a few degrees may be enough to cause an overload situation. That's why it's important to always position the main post of the crane directly in line with the center of the axle. There are basically two types of bead breakers that are used: the combination bead breaker for one-piece and three-piece wheels, and the Earthmover bead breaker used on five-piece assemblies. Rams require the use of the hydraulic pump to apply enough pressure so they stay in place. Always make sure that you do not pinch your fingers when you set the ram. The important thing to remember is to always stand clear of the assembly when applying force to the ram and the rim components. And never stand directly in front of any tire assembly when a hydraulic tool is in use from the backside.
In recent years, more manufacturers have turned to tubeless tyres on one-piece rims for smaller pieces of equipment. While these assemblies do not possess the potential hazards normally associated with multi-piece rims, they can be very dangerous if safety guidelines are not followed.
Holding the bead breaker handles, position the bead breaker so that the cup point set screw in the jaw makes solid contact with the rim and the foot is positioned between the bead of the tire and the rim flange. Using an approved rubber lubricant with a rust inhibitor, apply a thin film to the rim base and bead seat band taper where the tire bead will be positioned against the flange. Lightly lubricate both beads from the toe to the bead fitment line with a non-petroleum approved tire lubricant. Position the crane over the tire and attach the chain sling. Use the crane to slide the tire over the rim as far back as possible. Connect the hose on the hydraulic pump to the coupler on the Earthmover bead breaker, and then connect the air supply to the hydraulic pump. Securely position the tool with the hook in the bead breaking groove or pry bar pocket of the rim base, so the clevis is snug with the rim and both feet are touching the side flange. Place the hands of the tire hand or manipulator on both sides of the inner tire and gradually slide it over the outer rim. It may be necessary to slightly adjust the pads and rotate the hands during the demount process. The most important thing to remember is to take your time when sliding the inner tire over the outer rim. Use new Torx bolts and hardware to attach the half of the two-piece lock ring by hand threading and then partially tightening the bolts. With the help of another technician, place the two-piece lock ring in the rear lock ring groove and then hand thread the remaining 2 bolts with the correct hardware. Once the gaps are equal on both sides of the lock ring, tighten the Torx bolts and then torque to the manufacturer's specification. Position a second tire iron behind the first and pry the back bead over the flange. Repeat this process until the tire is removed from the rim. It is very important to clean and inspect the region that extends from the outside edge of the rim to the bottom of the bead seat band. The back rim flange and bead seat area should also be cleaned and free of all debris. Visually inspect the tire to ensure there is no damage from previous use, such as nails, impact breaks, cuts, bead damage, or signs of running flat. Wash out all foreign material from inside the tire and then inspect the inner liner for any creases, air bubbles, tears, exposed cords, or general irregularities. Lower the tire onto the rim, making sure you do not damage the beads in the process. Next, install the front side ring flange with the concave side facing the operator, followed by the bead seat band. Position the tire handler so the bead seat band and side ring flange can be depressed far enough to expose the O-ring and lock ring grooves. And use a tire iron or screwdriver to make sure it is properly positioned. Position the split in the lock ring opposite the valve stem. Trapped dirt and excessive surface corrosion will eventually work itself free as the wheels or rims flex during service. Eventually, the gaps become too big and the assembly begins to loosen. Even though the torque may be correct at installation, the clamping force will immediately begin to fall as the foreign material is compressed. Inspection of the components is equally important to create the correct amount of clamping force. The most important thing to remember is that the lug nuts on both wheel and rim studs must be incrementally tightened so the force is evenly distributed and the assembly sits squarely on the hub. Starting at the 12 o'clock position again, apply pressure to the wrench until it indicates the proper torque has been reached. Torque the remaining lug nuts in a star pattern and then repeat the process to ensure every nut has been tightened to the proper torque specification. Starting at the 12 o'clock position again, apply pressure to the wrench until it indicates the proper torque has been reached. Make sure you release the pressure as soon as the wrench clicks or the handle breaks, otherwise the lug nuts can be over-torqued. Torque the remaining lug nuts in a star pattern and then repeat the process to ensure every nut has been tightened to the proper torque specification.
Well, there you have it. I'm confident that if you follow the safety procedures and guidelines that we've outlined in this program, you will drastically reduce the chances for an accident. Some additional safety tips, which I call the 5 nevers. 1. Never work tired. 2. Never work under the influence of drugs or alcohol. 3. Never rush a job. 4. Never use unserviceable vehicles, tools or equipment. And 5. Never take shortcuts. Remember, your family, loved ones, employer and your customers all want you home fit and safe at the end of each day. On behalf of the Kling Group and the Tire Industry Association, I'm Tom Kling. Thanks for watching and please go safe.